Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 113. Today I'm going to talk about Scribes and Scribes, the dice game. Now this is basically Biblios, the dice game. If you've heard of Biblios, that's kind of a somewhat popular game. Biblios was originally Scribes and Scribes and then remade as Biblios. So it's by the same designer, and he's also self-published this game. This is sort of a twist on your sort of dice choosing type of game. You're going to roll some dice and choose some, and then maybe do some re-rolls or some other things. But this is kind of added sort of almost like a gambling element, and there's a little bit of auctioning involved. But the auctioning sort of feels more like gambling. So let me show you how it plays, and I'll come back and tell you more about it. Okay, I've got the game here set up for 3 players, and you can see you've got this board here with these different tracks, and you've also got these dies at the top of the board. And these dies will actually change value and sort of change the worth of each of these tracks, which represent different resources. Now each player is going to choose cubes in a color and then put them at the bottom of these tracks. And depending on the number of players, they're going to start at a different level. So with 2 players, you'd start at the bottom here, and then at the top here, with a 5-player game, you'd start all the way at the top. Then you're also going to get these money cards here, and these are in different denominations. And players will start the game off with the same amount of money, and then based on who's the start player, everybody will get like a coin extra going to the left around the start player. So normally you start with 3 1s, 2 2s, and a 3, and that's your starting money. And then on your turn, you're going to roll all of these dice here, and then you're going to take different actions. And I'll explain that here in just a second. But basically what you're trying to do is move your token up these different tracks in a track with a high value die. So at the end of the game, let's say the orange player was up here and the green player was down here like so. They're going to get 3 times whatever this number is. So if at the end of the game this was a 1, they get 3 gold, 3 times 1. Then the second highest player will get 1 times whatever that number, in this case 1 gold. Or if it was 6, which would be even better for these players, orange would get 18, and then green would get 6. Now as you move up these tracks, you're always going to want to stay to the left hand side. So if green were to come up here on a turn and he got to the same level as orange, he's going to stay to the right, which shows that orange is technically higher, sort of breaking the tie because he got there first. Also you can see these little gold amounts here along the track. So as you move up here, the first player to hit this will get a bonus of 2 gold right into their hand. Then the second player that passes or hits this mark will get 1. And so on. So if you get to the top here, you see you got 5 the first time, and then 3 for the second player. Now the game will end immediately once there's 3 cubes along any one of these top tracks up here, or there's 1 cube at the top of this Abbott track. You can see there's no dice at the top of that. The game will also end once one player has pulled 4 of their cubes off of the board, which won't usually happen. I've seen it happen almost one game, and I'll explain how that will happen here in a second. But that's the other way the game will end. So on a player's turn, they're going to take all of these dice and roll them, and then they're going to basically organize them into different piles based on the type. So you can see we've got 2 feathers there, this little Abbott symbol, this green symbol, and this blue symbol. So there's basically 3 types of dice in the game. You've got all of these here, which are like resource dice. And all of these have a side that matches one of the different tracks on the board, and there's 6 tracks on the board, so there's 1 side for each. Then you've also got this adjustment die, and when you choose this, then you can change the dice at the top, either up or down. So if you choose this one, for example, you can reduce the dice at the top, 2 different dice, by 1. And then you've here got this gold die, and this is the key to deciding what's going to happen on your turn. So if I had rolled something like this, so I've got these groups here. I've got 2 feathers, the blue, the green, and all this. So now, as the current player, I'm going to be able to choose one of these types. So what's going to happen, let's say I would choose this feather here. So I'm going to move up twice on the feather track. So if I were the blue player and I chose that, I just move up 2 spaces there, and that would be it. Then we'll set these aside, and then the player to my left will be able to choose another type. So they maybe will choose this book. They'll move up 1 space on the blue book track. Next player chooses this, and it's going to come back around to me. So in a 3-player game, we've made 1, 2, 3 choices. Now it's back to me. So maybe I'll just choose this, and I'll get 1 gold. So if I had rolled, let's say, 3 on there, then whoever would choose that would get 3 gold. And then the next player may choose this one, and then finally the other player will choose this die. Now you don't have to actually execute this die. For example, if you had a ++ and you didn't really want to increase 2 different dice by 1, then you could take this dice and execute none of it. Okay? So in the case of the, let's see here, +-, you couldn't actually decrease 1 and then not increase another. You'd have to do all of it or none of it. So that's a normal turn. So then let's say that happened, I'd pass the dice to the player on the left, they'd roll all the dice, and then they'd maybe break them out like this so you can see, oh look, I've got 3 books, 2 greens, and then the value or the adjustment dice and the gold. Player chooses that, goes up 3 blue, next player chooses that, goes up 2 green, next player chooses that, gets a gold, the next person may or may not adjust that. So that's like a basic turn, and that's all dictated by this gold die here. So anytime you roll a value, a coin value on there, you're going to execute a normal turn. Now where the really interesting fun parts happen is when you roll one of these other symbols. So let's take a look at this here. So you can see this is called the reroll symbol. If this is rolled, what can happen is the current player can then choose to pay some money to reroll any of these resource dice. They don't re-roll the gold die or the adjustment dice. So let's say I really wanted to go for it and try to get some more blues here. I can pay $1 the first time I want to re-roll and then choose and re-roll any of these resource die. So maybe I pay $1 and then re-roll these 2 greens. Oh, look at that, that was pretty awesome. I got 2 blues. Let's say I didn't get another blue there. And so I wanted to take this one and re-roll it again. The next re-roll is going to cost me $2 and then so on, $3. So you could keep re-rolling until you wanted to stop, and then you just execute the turn as normal. So maybe I take this and move up 4 blues, the next guy moves up the Abbott track, the purple track, and then the next guy does that. So that's what happens when the re-roll die happens. The next thing that's going to happen here is if you roll this gavel here and you're going to have an auction. So if I roll all of these, let's get something different here, and I roll this like so. So I've got all of these different ones here. Now what's going to happen is play is going to stop immediately, and then we're going to have an auction for the winner of the auction to execute all of the actions here. So they get to move up all these tracks and then also execute this adjustment die. And let's talk about how the auction works. It's pretty awesome. So as I said, everybody starts off with a hand of cards and some coins. And these all have the same backs. So what's going to happen is during the auction, everybody's just going to start laying down cards face down. There's no order, there's no specific way to do it. You just lay down a card. Now once you lay down a card, you can't pick it up. So I maybe start off and lay down 3 cards. They don't know if they're 1s, if they're 5s, if they're 10s, or what. And so let's say Billy and Frank, they start laying down cards, and I'm like, I'll lay down another one. They lay down some more, maybe I'll do another one. Maybe everybody keeps laying them down until whoever's turn it is kind of does like, going once, going twice, and then everybody agrees, okay, we're done. Then you're going to flip up and reveal and add up all the coins that you laid down. And whoever has the most is going to have to pay that into the bank, and whoever didn't win is going to have to take the coins back into their hand. Now if there's a tie, nobody wins, and nobody wins anything. Everybody just takes all their coins back. But if you win, you're going to execute all of these actions here, and then whoever's turn it is going to pick up all the dice and roll again. Now if they roll another auction, you're going to have another auction. If they roll a coin or the re-roll, then they're going to execute a normal turn. Everybody's going to choose as all the dice as they go around. Finally, we have this bag option here, and this is also a really interesting part. So this is also going to pause. We're going to execute sort of a reverse auction in this case, and then after that happens, then we're going to just execute a turn normally, dividing these up and then choosing them by type. So let me talk about what happens with the bag. So let's say, just to give you a setup here, let's say blue and orange had moved way up here, and then green and orange had moved up here, okay? And so starting with the player who rolled the bag, he's going to pick a number between 0 and 10. And what you're going to do is basically auction downwards from 10. Okay, so let's say the blue player was the guy that rolled the die. And he's got no stake in this because he knows that he's got to be able to choose this green one to get up here, and green and orange are way ahead of him. He's got really no shot at getting the end of game bonus there. So he's going to maybe say, okay, 8. And then orange or something will say 7, and then green says 6. And then blue says 5, okay? And then orange and green both pass. Now what's going to happen is blue has to remove one of his cubes from one of these dies on the track, not from the Abbott track, but from one of the tracks with the die. So he's going to say 5. He's going to get $5 into his hand. Then he has to remove this from that track. So he no longer has any stake in that track, but he got a little bit of a reward for that. Now once that happens, then you're going to go and just choose all the dice as normal, and then go around. Everybody's going to choose all the different types. And that's pretty much the game. You're going to roll. If you don't have an auction or you don't have the bag option, then everybody's going to take turns choosing the dice. You pass the dice to the next player and you keep going. Remember, the game's going to end when there's 3 tokens or 3 cubes up at the top of all of these spaces here, or there's 1 at the top of that. And then remember, I said once one player has pulled 4 of their cubes off, let's say, of these tracks, that also will trigger the game. And the game will end immediately. So if it's Green's turn to choose dice, and he's got a green die to choose, and there's already 2 at the top here. As soon as he chooses that, he bumps up, gets his reward there, and then that's it. We don't choose any more dice. The game ends immediately. And then we're just going to go down the line here, and then whoever's at the highest on all of these spaces will get 3 times whatever value amount this is in gold, and then whoever's in second will get 1 times that amount. And that's the game. If there's a tie, whoever's higher on this Abbott track will break the tie for most gold at the end of the game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. A couple things I didn't mention when I was doing the walkthrough. First thing is, let's say you're at the top of one of those tracks. Let's say you're at the top of the blue track, and then you choose, let's say, 2 blues in the dice. Then if you're at the top, you can spend those on another track. So it sort of becomes as a wild once you get to the top of that track. It's still sort of beneficial for you to choose that. The other thing is there's been a little bit of confusion. I think the guy's done a rules update on Board Game Geek you can go read. In the rules as printed, it says you have a hand limit of 10 cards, and that way you can make change whenever you want, but you have a hand limit of 10 cards. And that's because it prevents people from grabbing a whole bunch of ones. If they were to collect like 8 coins or something at one time, and they go grab 8 ones, and then when you're doing the auction, laying down those cards, it's like, well, he's laying out like 40 cards, and I've got my 5s and 3s and 10s, so it kind of would throw that out. Now, he's actually changed that because I believe somebody had play tested it or whatever recently after it's released, and they went through and kind of gobbled up all the high value cards. So I think he's removed that rule altogether. It's on Board Game Geek. I haven't really found any issues one way or the other, even with the 10 card hand limit or anybody trying to exploit that. I have seen where those large number of cards can get gobbled away because there hasn't been a whole lot of auctions, so people weren't spending their money. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. You can just kind of house rule that or whatever, just let people make change. As long as somebody doesn't really try to abuse, I'm going to grab only ones, every time I get money, then, don't let them play. But that's not a huge deal for me. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch at all. So those are 2 things I didn't mention in the walkthrough. I really like this game. I'm not really a fan of Yahtzee variants because there's like a million of them. This is not a Yahtzee variant. I mean, you do have sort of the dice rolling, and then you can pay to re-roll sometimes. But it has all these extra elements into it, and the things that you kind of need to keep track of. You've got to see, okay, how far up am I on a track? How far ahead of people am I on a track that I can kind of ignore that? How far behind am I? What's the value of the track? Is the value worth 1? Because there's a big difference between 1 and 6. I mean, even if you're first place, you get 3 gold versus 18 gold. So you really want to try and get up that track and hope that you get some pluses or get some other people along with you that also want to increase that. Because even if you're in second place, you're not really going to be that interested in increasing the value of the die. From a 1 to a 3 is only 1 to 3 gold for you, whereas the person in first place is 3 to 9 gold. So that's kind of an interesting little tension there. The auctions are awesome. I love that the auction mechanism, just slapping cards down, because you could be just throwing ones down and getting people to pay more because there's a really meaty set of die rolls for you. And usually the die rolls at the auction are usually good for most of the players. What else do I like? But I like the whole idea of being able to pull your cubes off and kind of get out of the track and things like that. It's just really interesting, sometimes with the choices that you have because at the end of the game, the dice modifiers are really strong because you're swinging 3-6 points one way or the other, whereas moving up the track early on is a little bit better. But if it's tight on a track, then you kind of trying to one up each other, and then things like that. So it's just really fun, really interesting game. You got to really kind of manage. It sort of has a gambling feel to it with the auctions. How much can I get rid of? Because gold is the victory condition. So you don't want to spend a whole ton on an auction, but if you're really going to move up a strong track that's at a 4, 5, or 6, then yeah, you want to kind of pay some money for that. And also, the thing to keep in mind is as you move up those tracks, you're going to get a cash reward. So you want to kind of get up those tracks quickly. So there's just a lot going on, but it's not really very deep or light or deep at all. I mean, the decisions are usually straightforward. It's more of a fun sort of push your luck gambling feel to it, with out being a Yahtzee variant finally. So yeah, I really enjoy this game, and I would highly recommend this game. It's very quickly, you can play this after everybody's played a couple of turns, and got sort of the feel for the game and how it works and how the auctions are valued and things like that. You can play this really quickly. You can play it a couple times in an hour easily. So anyway, take a look at it. I think the only place you can get it is this guy's website, I think. So if you go to drfins.com, I think is the website, or go to Board Game Geek, check it out, and then you can go from there. So take a look. Thanks.